Shadow work is one of my all-time favorite things. I've always loved the darkness, and there's just so much power and magic and mystery in shadow work. So, yes. I do just want to note that I mentioned some pretty intense stuff in this video. I don't go into any details around anything, but I mentioned some intense stuff. So just to give you a heads up and to check in with yourself, a reminder to breathe into your body as you watch this and check in with how you're feeling and care for yourself. And please reach out to me for any support, questions, or things that come up that you want to discuss or explore. I just want to emphasize that a big part of shadow work is also working with the golden shadow. So shadow work is anything that we've rejected and we're unaware of and unconscious with. This can make it a bit tricky to do shadow work because it is stuff that we're not aware of. So a few things that could be in your shadow. Anger and being angry is a big one for a lot of women. Also being someone who makes money, being a business person could be in your shadow. Being an outspoken go-getter could be in your shadow. Or really anything that you've disowned and rejected from yourself to be more safe or avoid pain in the past. So often shadow parts are also covering deeper woundings. So it might be, for example, that I have a deep belief, this is a real one, I have a deep belief from infancy around not mattering, and this big wound around not mattering, and that I don't matter to my caregivers and other people. And so on top of that wound is this shadow part of me that wants to get love and attention and doesn't really care how I get it, and seeks it from people who I know have hurt me and rejected me, and just wants to keep trying and digging for that love, right? So that's a part of me that's like, oh God, I don't want to admit that part. And underneath that part is this deep wounded part that feels like it doesn't matter. So another example of that is my inner man hater. So I have this part of me that thinks all men are horrifying and dangerous, and all of them, have the capacity to rape someone. I mean, I think any of us do. But this part is like this evil, nasty, man-hating part, right? And underneath that part is a deeply wounded part that is terrified of men. So there are also other parts of my shadow, like for me, being like a successful business person is still in my shadow a bit, and I'm working on that. And often there can be wounds underneath that around being seen and being safe and using my voice and those kind of things. So what I want to focus on here is embodied shadow work. So this is not about working out things in your mind. And I also want to note that a lot of this stuff can be really painful. And so this is not work to be taken lightly. And often we need held space to really be able to explore our shadows. So I know for me, if I know that I have something going on, like for example, when I had this stuff playing out around the part of me that wants to get love from people and the stuff underneath about mattering, there's a lot of deep, old, rotting wounding there. And I wasn't able to fully see the big picture of what was happening and to explore with my unconscious until I had held space to be able to go there. And so we only go as far as we can go and kind of what capacity we have. And in order to go really deep, we need to have that held space. And you can still explore on your own and build relationships with, whether it's someone that you do counseling, healing kind of work with, or if it's just a friend that you explore this kind of stuff with and have shadow containers. So first, what I want you to do is think of someone or something that triggers you. So it could be something about me that triggers you, that you don't like, or that you go, oh, Lotus, that. And think about that thing, and then embody and practice and act out that part. So when we begin to express and embody and pretend and act out these parts, we can have a deeper understanding and kind of open to learning about them and learning from them. So it may be, for example, with my inner man-hater, that I let out, I may ask a friend to hold the space for me, or I may just do it on my own if I feel safe enough, or like whatever feels right for you. And expressing like my inner man-hater and really letting that part out and giving it a voice and letting it be there. So another example of a shadow container and a way to explore is setting up a shadow container with people you trust. So it may be that you set a timer of 2 minutes and say, hey, I want to express and practice and explore this part of me. Can you just hold the space and be with me and witness me through it? And it can also be that you decide to play a game with friends and have that be a shadow container. So if you have this kind of conversation with your friends and talk about wanting to be able to explore some shadow parts, when you notice a part of your shadow coming up, like your inner bitch or something, you might just say, can I let my inner bitch out and have a bit of a shadow container here? Just checking in with your friend that it's fine for you to really let your inner bitch out. Recently, I was with some friends of mine and we were playing a card game, Spoons, if you've ever played. And we decided to let that game be a shadow container. So we allowed any of the parts of ourselves out that we normally would have kind of kept inside of it. So that maybe for some of us it was our really competitive parts, or our inner bitch, or our really needy inner children, and our like sore loser inner children. And all of those parts came out to play during this card game, and we let it go. And so it can be really important with shadow work to make sure that there's a specific container, whether it's a set time. I recommend actually setting a timer of, okay, we're gonna let out our shadows for 2 minutes. It's a great thing to explore with a partner as well, if you have a partner, and just to be sure that a lot of stuff can come up from this. So you may want to do it in a facilitated space first, or just on your own, just feeling into what feels comfortable for the both of you. And then you can, after the timer goes off, come back into you and discuss anything that's come up and move with any of the emotions that are there. So I really want to emphasize the embodied aspect of shadow work. So it may be that there's a part of you that really likes to fight and argue, and you maybe then realize that this is coming out in your relationships, and you may want to choose to have conscious arguments and conscious fights to let that part of you out so you can fully own and integrate it. So when we own these parts of ourselves, doing it with the body and the voice is a great way to do that. We can then integrate and see what's really going on for us and have it be a part of who we are that we can hold, instead of something that we're rejecting that's playing out sideways anyway. So it may be that in the past it wasn't safe to be creative and explore. So maybe you've disowned some of your creativity and you want to embody some of your creativity. And that maybe when you see someone online or in your life who is in that creativity, it really triggers you and there's something about it that you don't really like. So opening to embodying that, whatever it is that you don't like or that makes you want to look away, exploring with that and seeing what's there is really, really useful. Another aspect of this, which can be quite uncomfortable, is what's playing out from our past around our parents and any siblings, if we had them, and anyone else around in childhood, but parents are really a big one. So there's an expression which, as an incest survivor, can be quite fraught, but I think it's also useful, which is that there are 6 people in the bed when people are having sex. So if there are 2 adults in the bed, each of us is also carrying our stuff from our mom and our dad. So then each person has an additional 2, which makes 6. So we bring that stuff into our relationships. And this is a really uncomfortable one to hold and explore. Particularly for me, it's been quite a journey to be able to look at and be with and hold my shadow parts around where I maybe am projecting my father woundings or my mother woundings. So a kind of lighter example of this is on social media. So I've noticed some shadow stuff playing out around mother stuff and mentors that I've worked with, and wanting to be good enough for my mother and wanting to be successful enough for my mother, and wanting to show my family how successful I am. And I see lots of other people in the online space where it seems that some shadow stuff around their parents is perhaps playing out with mentors or other people, and how they're showing up in the online space. And I think another example of shadow in the online space is around comparison. So there's a lot of emphasis in our new age spiritual society and raising women up together on community and collaboration, collaboration instead of competition. And that's great. And we're all having stuff come up around comparison. And when we say that that's not acceptable to compare and that you shouldn't compare and you shouldn't be putting yourself down, it just comes out sideways in other ways. And so owning how you do compare and noticing if you're comparing what's coming up. Often it may be stuff around there not being enough space for you, or somebody else getting the attention that you maybe needed and wanted as a child, and those kind of things. And so whatever society says isn't in the mainstream, isn't okay, isn't in the patriarchy light, gets driven into the shadow. And another element here is that we are all connected. And so if something is happening in our society, it's often shadow playing out. So if we all owned our inner Donald Trump, it might help things. The kind of collective plays out whatever we are unconsciously hiding and avoiding. So there are all sorts of things around motherhood, for example, like what happens around infanticide when a mother kills her own baby. That's a big thing that is the shadow coming out in our collective. And the response that we see to that is often quite horrifying. And people are really vilifying the mother and making people evil and making, all sorts of abusers and pedophiles and stuff. And our society says that these people are evil monsters. And we kind of put them in the basket of monster because nobody wants to own their inner abuser. But we all have that capacity in us, and the more that we can own our humanness and the totality of our humanness, the more whole we can feel and the more depth we can feel. And truly, in order to experience the light and the joy and the expansiveness of life, I really believe that we need to explore and be able to hold and open to the shadow.